let's trace this back to the beginning for you. Like what initially stuck out to you? And I know you cited just TV broadly as an example and a
Right.
number of examples within there. So why don't you tell me about your early obsession with syndicated television?
Yeah. I mean, I was, I'm an only child. I always say was an only child, which is silly because I remain an only child. And my parents were divorced, so I spent a lot of time like raised by syndicated television, and watched I mean, I feel like I grew up in the age of the rerun, you know, that like when that became a thing, like nobody saw reruns before the mid to late 80s. And so all of those shows were, you know, family based. And so those all became like my family and my friends and stuff. And one of the first shows that I really felt that way about was The Facts of Life, the later seasons, not the Molly Ringwald seasons. And specifically because of Joe and Blair's relationship, mostly Joe, but they're sort of like whatever, very queer relationship, which they've like, those two actors have denied up and down the street, which is like, you don't get to tell us what we feel about you, you know, like we're gonna hold on to that, and you don't get to tell us whether you're gay or not. We're gonna make that decision for you. But I even just like the introduction of Joe, like the way that character came into the series is like very important. I don't, because they're like everybody, Natalie and I'm blanking on who is the woman that runs The Facts of Life. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows. You're screaming at the computer right now because I can't remember the name. They're all just like, the whole cast is just like fighting with each other, and then they hear a motorcycle in the distance and they're all like immediately like, oh my god, a hot boy or whatever. And then this like person comes in with like a mechanic's jumpsuit and a helmet on, and they're like all basically getting ready to fight over this boy because they're at an all-girls boarding school. And then like Joe takes her helmet off and she's just like immediately dislikes all of them and it's just like, you suck, you suck, you suck. Like, and I was just like, yes, this is the person. Who is this person? And like, I saw like myself on screen a little bit because I also went to an all-girls school, and I always felt like I was wearing those overalls and a helmet, you know, like that, like there was something slightly off. And also that I wanted them all to think I was like the boy coming into the school. So like that was definitely like one of my first sort of like queer things in media. And also I would say like Carla from Cheers, Rhea Perlman, who was also a big favorite of mine because we have the same name. She definitely has like some queerness going for her, like the way she treats Diane and stuff. It's very queer reading, you know. But The Facts of Life was a big one. I really felt myself in that like friend group, and like very much like Joe, or like I would be best friends with Joe.
Yeah, there's definitely at an earlier age, it's always like, I want to hang out with that person. Like, why can't we just hang out? Like, let's talk. It'd be so fun.
But I feel like that's what syndicated TV is I got to hang out with that person just like back to back from 7 to 8 p.m. You know,
that's
like,
true, right? It was like the play date essentially. You just knew. Yeah.
Like my days and my nights were all around, you know, like when those shows were going to be on. Like, not that I had a schedule as a child, but I knew it was 7 p.m. if Cheers was coming on, or, you know, if The Facts of Life was on. If, you know, I was always looking forward to those things.
How much of your experience with that was just with you? I mean, did you have other friends or people in your life that you talked to about the show or Joe or anything?
I don't know. I mean, I had a best friend when I was like 6 that she was like a year older than me, and she was very much like Blair. Like if we were, like she was like more into like she would do choreography in her basement, and I would be like making like a joke choreography around it where I like couldn't do the dancing, but that was like the choreography was that I was being the funny one. So I don't know if I just dropped all my notes.
That's okay.
It's pretty funny that I was talking about doing silly things and then I just did a pratfall on I very much went boink, like put my elbow on a thing that wasn't
threw up in the air. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't something that at the time that I really talked to anybody about. However, being older and talking to other, you know, butch people, she like Joe is absolutely a vector in particular, like like butch people of a certain age, you know, are very much like, oh yeah, absolutely, that person made me gay. Like they're the reason that I thought it was a thing, you know, like she's very much, you know, an icon in that way. Like a lesser known one that like everybody knows, but she's not like, you know, as big as, I don't know, Ellen or something. I don't know, a precursor. Or A League of Their Own, or Tori from Saved by the Bell. Just wanted to make sure we didn't skip over her.
I was going to say, that was my next bullet point. So Tori came a little bit later in the timeline, I assume. Yeah. Let's talk about Tori.
It's still syndicated. But yeah, Tori was on Saved by the Bell, and she was like a brief replacement for Tiffany Amber Thiessen, and like a love interest for Zach. But they like, it was a very much like, sort of similar to Slater and Jesse, where like they fought a lot, even though they were like together. But Tori was very much like read as queer to me, even though that's not what I thought. I had no concept of what that was. And that actor was also in a TV movie, like a Disney TV movie called The Parent Trap 3. She and her triplet sisters star in that. But yeah, that was a person that I was like, oh, that. You know, like I didn't have words for it. I didn't have like an understanding for it. I didn't even have a context for it, but I was just like, oh, that person, like the way that person talks, the way that person is carrying their fake high school books and like wearing a suede bomber jacket and like giving Zach Morris shit. Like that is something that I relate to that. I don't know what it is. I want to be friends with that person. I want to hang out with them. I want to, you know, watch movies with them or whatever it is. Like, oh, that is a thing that like helped me to understand myself like a little bit.
Yeah, the phrase that was thrown out by one of the academics that I talked to was just moving through the world, the way that these people move through the world and carry themselves. You know, there's just like a confidence to them in a certain way that we can't help but emulate. And you know, especially as a young kid when you're still figuring out the world, that's like all you can ask for, is to feel like you know what you're doing and know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and what's wild is I would imagine at those times that somebody like that actor would need to not be out to keep working, you know? And even now, people are still not out because they want to keep working, or because they feel they can't, you know, there's many explanations for that. So like those little moments of confidence coming through and those specifics of a person, you know, that do read as queer or read as you know, to somebody that's watching on the other end, and like that sort of the like secret language of it, you know, the fact that it could even make it through is like very important, and that those things exist, and you see that and you go, oh, that's actually okay. These things that people are telling me, whether it's directly telling me not to act like that, don't walk like that, don't put your, you know, like all those, that sort of monitoring that people do either out of fear or, you know, or because they are afraid that their kid is going to have a bad life because they don't, you know, all these things, like it's not always out of like, it's not always from a bad place, but it's painful, you know? So then when you see that on screen in this place that you like to go, you're like, oh, this is okay. Like somewhere inside of you, whether you keep doing it or not, and then, or you just like wait till later or something, you're like being told by Tori on Saved by the Bell, like, oh, that's like, okay. It's okay to carry myself that way. And like, it's all right because that person's doing it and it's on TV. Which can have its drawbacks, obviously. Right. But in the context of this, it's very helpful for visibility for LGBTQ folks, you know?
Mm-hmm. And one other specific example from TV was Rudy Huxtable.
Oh, yeah.
That you had brought up.
Yeah, I feel like at that particular time when she was on TV, she was like, I just can't, in just like a cursory flip through my brain, I just can't think of another show that had a girl that was that age, other than like Punky Brewster, but like and also there we go. I'm just like pulling the thread and I get to Punky Brewster. I can't believe I forgot Punky Brewster. Anyway, I can't think of another show that was an ensemble cast that had a little girl that age that got to really be a person. Like she's Rudy Huxtable as a child is very much like, she's not just like this precocious cartoon that pops in every once in a while. She's literally a kid. She's just like a fully formed kid that is precocious occasionally, but that's not the only thing that she does. Like, she's actually like gives her parents like attitude, and like her brother and sisters, and like hangs with all these kids in this way that like I just don't feel like there was another show at that time. I kind of feel like that character was the blueprint for the precocious child that came after, like with Raven-Symoné on the same show, and then Full House, and then everything. It just, there always had to be this little kid that was precocious. But I just feel like she really, and her friendship with Bug, of like, she had this boyfriend, and like she was very much the like dominant one in the friendship, and like it was just such a rare thing to see a boy and a girl be friends and have it not be like played for like laughs that they're boyfriend and girlfriend all the time, like that they like an actual real friendship that felt real to me, because most of my friendships as a kid were with boys. So I was like, oh, this is okay. Rudy's doing it, it's all right.
Yeah, she definitely was the blueprint in a lot of ways. And it's funny because I was like, yeah, she's a fully formed character. She's not some catchphrase spouting, but I was like, well, she does spout catchphrases, but we just then eventually reduced so many of those precocious kids characters to catchphrases. So it's like, she's
that
the full
the only
person.
thing. Yeah. She had multiple catchphrases.
Not just one.
The shelf life of them was much longer than, she didn't just come in and say, did I do that every week?
Right. But I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time to talk about A League of Their Own.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's transition into film and discuss that. I mean, where I'm curious if this is like a chicken or the egg sort of thing, with baseball being central to it, or you're already interested in baseball, or did that kind of birth the interest in baseball?
No, I was already interested in baseball, because I was, I've been interested in baseball as long as I've been a queer person, so that's like the whole time, you know? It was always on, it was always around in my family. It was just like, I just gravitated towards it right away. And I was 10 when the movie came out, so I'm not like holding myself too accountable for this, but like many people were unaware of that league, you know, until the movie came out, because the Major League Baseball did a great job of ignoring it for a long time. But I remember going to see it in the theater, and it just like changing my entire world, you know, of just like, I had no idea. And what's wild is the way that movie made me feel is the exact same way that Rosie O'Donnell's character like says in a monologue on the bus when they're going to another game, about like the guy's always making her feel like she was weird or wrong or something just because she played ball, and she's like, there's a bunch of us, you know, like, so it can't be true that I'm weird if there's a bunch of us. And like that, looking back on it as an adult is like, and obviously there's the subtext, many of those actors are queer actors, and like it's pretty wild that the movie itself is this reflection of the actual league itself, which was also very queer, from in the 40s, you know, which is a wild thing to consider. But it just like really, because also women's sports in general as a cultural thing, that movie really helped women's sports as well. Like, women's sports were happening. I don't want to act like they weren't happening. It's just they weren't getting the attention that they began to get in the 90s. And a lot of that was, you know, the turnover of a second generation through Title IX. And then also people making movies like A League of Their Own, going like, yeah, women play sports too. And also it's really fun to watch them play sports, which is also just like a very queer thing too, because, you know, queerness has always really supported women's sports. It's just been a thing, you know? Like Rosie O'Donnell wrote the foreword to the WNBA celebration book that I have on my bookshelf. So like, and even, you know, like just the friendships that are in that movie, and the sort of like, bromances in that movie are very like, there's just so much subtext to it, and I just related to it right away. Even the like sister relationship, which I do not have, but I had with many people in my life, of like, I was either the Dottie or the Kit or both, you know, like sometimes I feel like I'm a Dottie with a Kit Rising kind of a thing. But more so like a Doris Moon, probably. But that era of Madonna is the era that I was like, if I were to say like, what era of Madonna was I a fan of? It's that one, like the Like a Prayer and all that stuff, the sort of more gospel-y type stuff. Because like earlier 80s Madonna pre A League of Their Own was very like girly, and I was like, not for me. I'm not into this. But I did like Madonna, and I also like, I think I like her because she was in that movie. Like that's, for me, that's what did it, because she like does such a great job in that movie. And also, the relationship with Doris and Madonna, it's just like all of it is so, and Marla Hooch, like that's one of the queerest things I've ever seen on film. But I wouldn't say I'm like this huge Madonna fan,
Mm-hmm.
but I also like will throw on Madonna and be like, I love this.
Right.
With my whole heart. So it's like, it's both and,
Yeah, it's hard not to just love the music. But I was curious, to pick your brain, I was like, did that lead to another like a Madonna fandom then, because we were so invested in this movie?
I mean, I feel like it did, because I mean, I was starting to get there with Dick Tracy. Like, okay, all right, she's a serious actor now. And then she starts playing baseball. It's like, all right, I'm in, And
right.
I do have, and I feel like this is mostly nostalgia speaking, but I do have like a really soft spot for that sort of like just gospel inspired pop movement throughout the early and mid 90s of, like of Whitney and Madonna and basically everybody, but I feel like all music in the 90s got gospel choir backing it up, and like we just don't do that anymore, and I really miss it.
Can you tell me about the Back to the Future fascination?
Sure. That movie is just like, it's funny, I was talking with a friend about it. He was like, so what is it about this movie that you love? And like, it was just the first like sort of adult movie that I got to watch that wasn't like explicitly a children's movie. And I feel like I just saw myself in Marty, like immediately, like whether it was that I was already that or that I wanted to be that, I don't really know. It's probably both. But like, he just was this cool person who was also like kind and nice, like, and just genuinely wanting to do the right thing for the most part. And I just really, really gravitated towards that movie and just loved it. And also with having divorced parents, it like really spoke to me that I could get in a time machine and maybe fix it. I think that was like a big part of it. But like the queerness part of it is just, I feel like, and this could just be because I've seen the movie so many times, but I feel like people would relate to this. It is almost as though Marty is kind of genderless. And I know that's not true because like he's very much a guy. But at the same time, like it's just, it's like the thing starts to transcend itself and you're like, this is just an idea. Like this person is just an idea and I can put myself into this thing and really relate to it and really see myself in it, because it's about like feelings and emotions and like compassion and kindness and trying to do the right thing, like caring about other people. Like he genuinely cares about his parents and like loves them, and wants them to be together selfishly because he would love to still exist, but is like a good kid, and also just side note, the power on my laptop is 88%, and so I just feel like that's means something. And it's not, that movie is, to me that movie is perfect in that there's no wasted time in it, and like it's very tight, and you're never seeing something that you don't need to see, that doesn't have some payoff or make sense within the world of the movie. However, it's not a perfect movie in that there's a lot of stuff, it's like very sexist, it's like very, but I feel like it's just the queer experience of finding yourself in things that don't explicitly include you, that there's like there is the experience of going like that. I can take what I like from that and I can leave the rest of it, which is like, I relate to this. I relate to like, this person is attracted to me and they shouldn't be, and this is wrong, so I gotta go somewhere else. Like this is, like the movie speaks to me even though it's not written about me for me, And I feel like as queer people, we get to like, we exercise that sort of creative muscle a little bit, perhaps earlier than some people get to, or we just are given more opportunities to, because we're not like, especially the era that we're talking about, like now there's queer characters all the time, and I'm just like, what the hell's going on? But you know, like throughout older stuff, like you had to like kind of dig, and you had to like find yourself in it. And I think both are great, you know, both are fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Fried green tomatoes.
Yeah.
Of it all.
Yeah, that's the one of it all. That one, so that one is it's a big one. A lot of people talk about it. And we'll just get out of the way at the beginning that, like, obviously there's explicit queerness in the book that was then not in the movie. Something I had no idea about when I was a child and watched it for the first time. Which is almost like better. Not that they took it out. Like, I'm definitely not advocating for that. However, that is what happened. So it was still an important movie for me, because when I saw it, I was young enough that what was really important to me was like the backstory of Iggy as a person, as opposed to the romance that is like just hinted towards, you know, like that was important to see, because it was like, oh, there's something happening here and I don't know what that is. But as a kid seeing that movie and seeing that kid that was like just like me, very similar to the League of Their Own, because these movies are like, what, a year apart, I think. Those two movies in my life are just like huge, you know, like very, very, very huge for my pre-adolescence. Like seeing Iggy like not wanting to go to church in the dress and feeling so uncomfortable in it, and then her brother like sticking up for her, and like the just huge beaming smile on her face, like wearing the suit in church. And I was just like, that's me. That's how I feel every day. Like I had to wear a uniform to school, which was a skirt, and I hated it every single day of my life. I absolutely hated it. I wore shorts underneath it so that I had like pants on to some degree. And like, I just remember seeing that and being like, oh, somebody gets it. Somebody understands. And I'm not the only person that feels that way. I'm not like crazy or wrong, or, you know, like I'm not like the one wrong one. Like there are other kids that don't want to do that thing, and it's okay. Like just like all these other stories that we're talking about, like these things are okay. And for me too, even like looking back on that movie with a little bit of like sort of softness and kindness, that like, yes, it's unfortunate that the queer romance was taken out of it, but I also think it's important as a film to see that like queerness is not just a thing that depends on a relationship. Like being in a relationship with someone else is not the thing that actually makes you queer. Like it's a self-determined identity. Like if you are queer, you are queer, you know, like it's not, there's not like a checkbox that you have. That is the only checkbox. It's just like, am I a queer person? Yes. You know, like that's it. And that movie sort of in retrospect, like looking back at it, instead of with pitchforks and like a torch, I look at it as like, oh, that is when I started to learn that about myself. And I didn't think I had to like, or now I look at it more of like, I don't have to be in a relationship to prove my queerness to myself or to other people. And like that character, that childhood character is like a major part of that feeling.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we were like almost at this point when we were discussing Back to the Future. I mean, there are some of these qualities that you admired in Marty too, but like this just makes it even more clear. You know, it's not, the journey isn't necessarily about the romantic relationship. It is just about this self-discovery and just the fostering of an identity.
Right.
And that's really
the understanding of it, and
yeah, so it's like, as you said, it's fascinating that as it happens, sure, the queer romance is removed, at least explicitly, from the movie, but it almost becomes more of a tool than, at least for you at that time, you know, it was maybe more helpful for that reason.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like it's one of those ones that I didn't know at the time, but like looking back on it now, I'm like, oh yeah, that absolutely made sense to me in a way that like paid off later, kind of.